Let's get to your documentary. Quite extraordinary revelations coming out already. The documentary's a week tonight, 8 p.m. next Sunday night. Men in the Mirror. It looks at the mirror careers and personalities of Malcolm Turnbull and Kevin Rudd.
Yeah, look, I can't wait to share this doco with everyone. 8 o'clock next Sunday night. I've been upstairs with producer Rebecca just putting some finishing touches on it today. It's just a ripping yarn. We've all lived through this. You know, I used to work for Malcolm Turnbull. I was his chief of staff the first time he was leader, back in opposition leader in 2009. I've seen Kevin Rudd at close hand since I worked for Foreign Minister Alexander Downer in the early 2000s, and Kevin Rudd was the shadow foreign minister. So I've seen their rises and falls at close hand. And it's always struck me that they're very similar individuals. They have similar talents, and similar fatal flaws. And that's what this documentary explores. And the reasons that it's so current, of course, is because the two of them are so prominent now. The two of them have become frenemies. They're campaigning against News Corp. They're campaigning on climate change. They're criticising their former colleagues. They're seeking revenge against their former colleagues. It's quite extraordinary to watch. It's unusual in Australian politics. They're both young, healthy, wealthy. They're going to be around for a while to come. So we posed the question also, you know, what are these guys going to do in the future? What's it all going to come to?
One of the big revelations, I take it in the documentary, and it was definitely in your weekend column in the Weekend Australian yesterday, was that when you were Chief of Staff for Malcolm Turnbull, you reached out to Rudd's Chief of Staff to try strike a deal on the CPRS, the Carbon Pollution Reduction Scheme, which was, of course, the signature policy at the time. But Rudd could have seized the moment to have a historic climate change deal for Australia. And, you know, remembering he said this was the greatest moral dilemma of our time, but he chose not to do that so that he could strike at the heart of Malcolm.
Yeah, I think this is a striking moment, a pivotal moment in our recent political history, and it hasn't been focused on enough. Malcolm Turnbull's made some references to it in his memoir, but it's coloured everything about Turnbull and Rudd, Labor and Liberal, and what's happened in climate policy since. And it was the case that Malcolm Turnbull knew there was going to be an internal revolt against him. He wanted to get the emissions trading scheme, Kevin Rudd's carbon pollution reduction scheme, amended and passed and through Parliament, get that monkey off his back so that he wouldn't be rolled by Tony Abbott. And I reached out at Malcolm's behest directly to Kevin Rudd's office, said, look, if we can get the Prime Minister and opposition leader together, spoke to Alastair Jordan, you'll remember him, the Chief of Staff to Kevin Rudd. If you just get them together for a couple of hours, I'm certain they can come to a deal. You pass the legislation and suddenly Australia has this emissions reduction scheme that Rudd had been his champion policy. Rudd the next day came back to us via Alastair Jordan. He'd refused. So rather than grab his signature policy, he wanted to maximise Malcolm Turnbull's pain. And the point I make in the documentary, and I wrote yesterday, is I call this Kevin Rudd's triple termination, his termination trifecta moment, because it did get rid of Malcolm. It made sure there was a revolt against Malcolm and he lost the Liberal leadership. But it also meant that his emissions trading scheme was blocked in the Senate. So that was finished, never to be seen since. And thirdly, of course, because of that, because he walked away from his CPRS, Kevin Rudd's supporters and his party just fell away from him. So it killed his leadership as well.
Yeah, they thought he didn't believe in anything. You also make the point that, you know, Rudd has now run this campaign where he's blaming the media for the loss of his leadership. And, you know, you look back at what his own colleagues said about him. You know, you remember what Wayne Swan said, his own treasurer, Nicola Roxon. You know, he just rewrites history to forget this bitter chapter in his political career.
Look, we all know the media and politics is a robust game, and Rudd and Turnbull, I've had plenty of media barracking for them at times, and I've had plenty of media criticism at times. But when you've got his own cabinet colleagues, I remember Stephen Conroy, when he was Communications Minister, saying Rudd had contempt for his colleagues and contempt for voters. And Nicola Roxon, his Health Minister, said that he was a bastard. And these were the people who brought him down. These were his own cabinet colleagues, still in cabinet, still in Parliament when they were saying this stuff. So I don't know what he thinks. Some evil News Corp silicon chip was planted into the brains of his own cabinet colleagues. It's absurd. I mean, this gets to this fatal flaw, the shared fatal flaw between both these men. They were both brilliant enough to actually get the leadership of their own parties twice to both become Prime Minister, but neither of them could keep their own parties, their own cabinets, their own people on board with them for the ride.
Yeah, yeah. I wish we could talk about this more, because I think the way Malcolm misrepresented his true colours when he was Prime Minister is absolutely fascinating as well. But I think we're going to have to watch your documentary.
8 o'clock this channel next Sunday.
Next Sunday, 8 p.m. Thank
Cheers.
you so much, Chris.
Pleasure, Sharri.